So Blizzard seems to have taken a new flavor of storytelling lately with these animated shorts.
Another
Hi Meg, thank you for the sub. I appreciate it. Thank you for the prime. Hi Meg, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Death Knight of our Scourge. They've taken on a new way of telling stories, and it's much more dark, much more gritty. I mean, we literally watched Lady Leandrin mace her father to death, you know? Like I said, I'm not talking about the spray. I'm talking about the weapon. And there was nothing else to be had from that other than she just had to execute her father, okay? And then we watched the Erator one right now. Pretty cool. Less gritty, but still kind of just him manning up, you know, being okay with the fact that his parents weren't around all the time and just, he just wanted to Giga Chad his life away. And he's going to go on an adventure. And I think that's always been something that a male trope guys have always liked is just, hey, I'm going to go on an adventure. Hey, girls can like going on an adventure too if they want. But overall, I really like the art style. I like the storytelling style of this all. A lot more people are dying in these stories now. We've seen the Scourge and everything it's capable of. We witnessed Sylvanas, literally Banshee, killing a bunch of fucking mages in Dalaran. So this is really cool stuff. Much more gritty, maybe more Metzen-esque. But definitely, I like the takes. We'll see what this is all about. Let's see what Bellular has to say about Blizzard just made peak Warcraft. This is it. Let's see what this one's all about.
A daughter beats her undead father to death with a mace in the rain. For him...
Okay, well, I didn't now I'm gonna get pre-watch allegations because I said, father, she just killed her dad with a mace. It's, you know, it was obvious. I watched that. Okay, I didn't watch this, but I watched the same video Bellular watched. And it was a very pivotal moment in the set. No, it's not pre-watched. That was it's unmistakable. That was a huge moment in the cinematic, all right? The fuck, guys?
There is no redemption arc. There is no last-minute forgiveness. She swings until he stops moving because that's what war demands, and Blizzard's latest, newest cinematic does not shy away from that. It absolutely sticks its landing. Blizzard released this recently.
Ridiculous.
It's a character piece on Leandrin, who's a major character in Midnight, and it was so good that it reminded a lot of people what Warcraft really feels like at its best.
Yeah.
And that matters because Warcraft's identity has felt mixed as of late. As I record this video, midnight is quite literally upon us. So, here is why this matters. Why it matters to the story, why a lot of modern WoW has felt weird in terms of its story, and how this cinematic can be held up as a high bar for Blizzard to strive toward.
Yeah, it was a very cool cinematic.
I'll begin by getting something out of the way. If you felt like something's been off with WoW's tone, I think you would be right. Dragonflight, even though it had fantastic bits, like say the Blue Dragon questline, and lots of bright little sparks, it did in large part end up feeling like a children's show.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this. Guys, we did this, right when I saw this live, I hadn't seen this cinematic until we killed Farak. And I'm like, okay, we just watched a bunch of these guys rise up in the air, a bunch of glitter flew up their assholes, and now they have their power back. I'm like, what the fuck happened? We just slaughtered a dragon. Where is he? Like, Farak's not even mentioned. No words from him. We're completely ignoring the fact that we just killed him, and we're looking at everybody get all excited and glittery about their powers coming back. I'm like, where the fuck is the grit here? There's no dragon even bleeding out on the ground behind him. That's it. It's just, okay, we killed something. Let's ignore the killing. Let's just get to the glitter part. I don't know. The whole thing about Dragonflight, it was a very good systems-based expansion, right? It gave us new profession style, the new talent trees, a bunch of other kind of base-level shit that kind of right now the War Within and the World Soul Saga is building off of. But besides that, the storytelling was just, oh my God. It was so much huggy-friendly. You know, I don't think anyone died in this other than Farak. Viranath, you know, just became our friend. Iridikron, who is probably the coolest thing to come out of that expansion, he went on to do other things, and we'll see what he ends up doing. But we've already seen more death in these pre-cinematics for the Midnight than we have probably in the last 3 expansions. So this is good. This is good. I like where things are going.
Dialogue. Things that were...
Razageth died. Yeah, but, you know, who cares about Razageth? She looked like a fucking chicken. I mean, Razageth was like a weird, just like a one-off character. Okay, see you later.
And honestly, puerile. The Imidrisil campaign and that Avengers Assemble moment that just made people physically cringe. And then the War Within gave us the likes of the Red Dawn questline. The War Within was a fragmented mess, but I want to hone in on Red Dawn because a bit of it follows through into Midnight. That's because Eitrig, an orc who fought humanity in the First and Second Wars, and who was hunted down like a rat after the Horde fell, is a son of Lothar, all of a sudden, the Sons of Lothar being the very organization built to, destroy the
Eradicate
Horde and
the Horde,
take
yeah.
out his kind. One of its leaders, Danath Trollbane, was very recently his enemy. Danath bragged about killing orcs and asked to throw Eitrig's corpse into the Stromgarde moat as recently as Battle for Azeroth. He suddenly shows up and is involved in the main campaign of Midnight. And the thing is, they don't show him having a change of heart. They don't show his development. No, what happened is his hatred, the uncomfortable parts of his past, were transplanted onto his niece in the Red Dawn questline. Then, it was just called character development. It allowed him to show up as a new dude who's older and wiser.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
he gets a redemption arc. He didn't need a redemption arc. It's okay if he's just a racist bald man. Honestly, that's fine. He could just be a bad dude. And I think Blizzard is scared of having bad guys in the game. I don't know what it is. Everybody has to get a redemption arc. Everybody has to find the light at the end of the day, or become a good guy, or realize the things they did is wrong, and then lecture us about how the things they did is wrong. It's just no, we don't need that. It's okay if there's just pompous assholes walking around. It's like real life, It works, and it's fine. And if they want to execute everybody around them who doesn't look like them, well, okay, then we'll just deal with them. We don't need a redemption arc for everybody. I mean, this bitch, I can't believe they actually added somebody in the game with librarian glasses as a bad guy. This is ridiculous. This whole arc was fucking weird.
Never got to see that development. And funnily enough, when you're doing a story, that bit's actually really important. It shouldn't happen off screen, because it means that whenever Blizzard tries to have some big conclusion to their story and have their schmaltzy moment, well, it feels unearned. How many times have you looked at a modern WoW story beat and felt that it just felt...
Dragon says, Sam gooning to her late at night. So what if I goon to her? I've gooned to a lot of things I'm not proud of. That doesn't make it good.
Unearned. That the orchestral swell in the music didn't really resonate with you, because it just didn't feel like Blizzard had laid the groundwork to get there. Now, this kind of thing has been building for years. Some of the marketing can feel quite cuddly. The quest writing, in particular, has felt safe. Characters who should be complicated get sanded down until they are inoffensive. And the stories keep resolving the same old way.
I think that's what it comes down to, is Blizzard's afraid to offend people. Even have a villain be offensive. You know what I mean? And by their nature, villains should be offensive. They're going against the grain. They want to uproot things, change things. They don't like the way things are going for whatever reason. Yeah, and they just don't. That's I think what it is they're afraid to make some kind of controversial villain statement, I hate you guys or something. I don't know. And I'm hoping they're going away from that. I'm hoping we're getting a little bit of controversy back in the game. If the controversy comes from a villain, you don't have to be afraid of it. We're going to probably try to kill them and loot their corpse anyway, so it doesn't matter.
But then Blizzard dropped All That Is Sacred. And they've had many fantastic cinematics recently.
This one was awesome, though.
Particularly of note.
I like this one more than the Eretor one, I'll be honest. The Eretor one's still cool, but this one, man. No, this one was a whole nother level. Probably one of my favorite pieces of WoW content in a long time.
Because of how damn good it is. Compare what you're looking at right now to that Emir Drasil scene. Compare the Eitrig and Danath stuff, enemies for 30 years, now allies because the plot needs them to be, to this cinematic one that does go to dark places where Liadrin kills her own father.
The war in Warcraft. Look at this. I mean, my God, man. He just gets fucking get over here chain gripped into the smoke. You watch the light leave his eyes, the light literally leave his hand, the last flicker of light. My God. This was intense. But that's what war is. Imagine that. War is intense.
Because some things can't...
This right here, the last bit of light.
Be reconciled. Some things can't be changed. Arthas took him out. He's a scourge now. She had to do that. I think the gap in the storytelling here is enormous. Some of that is because you're dealing with two different mediums, and a cinematic does get to be focused. But even though that is the case, this truly does matter. This video isn't about one bad questline. The pattern has been too consistent for that. And the thing is, when you have hundreds of people building a world and nobody really holding the line on what that world is supposed to feel like, well, everything drifts towards being safe, towards being inoffensive, towards similar resolutions every time. That has been happening.
Right.
And the direction of that drift is specific. Blizzard's writers have maybe been mapping some of the modern values they hold directly onto the secondary world, rather than exploring those values through this secondary world.
Right.
There's a huge difference between that and just...
You know one thing that happens in war? You want to know something that happens in war? I'm not speaking from experience. I mean, I've never been involved in a war. But values, a lot of times, they get reduced. They get thrown out the window. Victory becomes the only thing that matters, and values don't matter as much anymore. So, I mean, and if you want to say, well, what's the point in victory if you win because you sacrificed your values? I'm not sure. But I'm just telling you the nature of war. It's gritty, it's grimy. You don't get to be friends, and hey, the guy holds up a yield sign at the end of the battle, and you don't kill him. No, that's not really how it works. So the grittiness of the recent cinematics and everything, I feel like take more of a war tone, where like it's not like her father had a last second like, wait, I'm your father again, and then she didn't have to kill him. No, she just had to fucking kill him. Lady Leandrin had to bludgeon her father's skull in. And that's what war is. It's dirty, it's grimy. It's not a happy ending. There's nothing happy about that. But she did what she had to do. And that just feels more Warcraft. Feels, I don't know, there's a difference. And I'm kind of excited to see where things go now that they've kind of upped the ante there.
Mapping the values on. As an example, Tolkien built, say, Middle-earth with his values deeply baked in from the start. That works. The world is constructed around those principles. But what Blizzard's been doing as of late is retrofitting values onto a world that was built with a different internal logic, and I think the seams really do show. I would say, in a way, it's the Fukuyama problem applied to fiction. Francis Fukuyama argued that liberal democracy was, in a way, the end point of history. It was the final form. He was wrong on that, and to his credit, by the way, he did admit so. But the instinct that Fukuyama identified, that there is only one direction that things are allowed to move and it's forward, that's exactly what's happening to Warcraft storytelling. Grudges dissolve, enemies become friends, organizations founded in violence quietly rebrand into something more palatable, and the uncomfortable things are transplanted away to insane evil characters. It's really not been working. Arc after arc feels the same, and the universe becomes one note because the only permitted destination is reconciliation. Now, the thing is...
He's right, and you know why? You know why a lot of people always like get on the bring Garrosh back, and Garrosh, the last war chief, Garrosh, my true war chief. All that shit about Garrosh is because he was like, he didn't change. He was quite the opposite of all this shit. He was very much like, he had his beliefs, he had his ways, and no matter what happened in real-life society or in Warcraft society, that guy was just fucking straight as an arrow. You knew how Garrosh felt about everything, and none of that was going to change.
Let us lay waste to this
Murphy,
realm.
thank you for the follow, man. Welcome to our Scourge. So I think that's why a lot of people, whether or not they agreed with Garrosh's style or what he was doing, they appreciated the fact that Garrosh was fucking authentic, man. He was just giga-orking around, dick swinging, and he didn't give a fuck about what anybody thought. And that's why I think a lot of people still like him till this day. Even his final moments in Shadowlands, guy didn't give a fuck. Right? He just reduced his jailer into a pile of ash. So he's pretty badass. I appreciate Garrosh for what he was.
Here, I am not disagreeing with Blizzard's values.
He became a
I am
rock
not
element.
making any statements that are about politics or America or any of those things. What I'm talking about here is storytelling and how we construct our stories and our worlds. Just think about what all that does to a world that is actually called Warcraft. Now think about the likes of Warhammer 40k. It's unapologetically grim, it is brutal, it is dark. Maybe dark in some of the ways that certainly make World of Warcraft have a bit of a stroke. WoW isn't really doing things like, that big road paved with skulls leading up to the Dark Portal.
Right.
But the thing is, at least when I look at the Warhammer fandom, progressive people from all different political walks of life absolutely love it. And I don't see demands that 40k moderates itself. I don't think anyone is demanding for the Imperium to learn to coexist with the Tyranids, or for sweeping imperial political reforms that move in the direction of unambiguously good progress.
Yeah, good
and the reason why is because the secondary world's identity is not an audience's politics. It's the internal rules of its fiction, and when those rules are respected, the fiction works for everyone. and the themes can be explored in a way that I feel lands far more robustly than when it's done in such a plain way, as they've so often done within Warcraft, whilst of course being rather milquetoast. Now, when you don't respect those rules, when you map one country's contemporary anxieties onto a world that is supposed to belong to everyone, that has a large global reach and audience, you end up getting something that feels less like art, more like therapy.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of subtlety that I could be missing in saying.
It feels like a lot of times when they get into this political, don't hurt me, we're gonna all be good friends now. It feels like we're being lectured, like we're being talked down to. Like we're being told this is what a good guy does. This is how good things should be. And it doesn't feel like a Warcraft game anymore. It doesn't feel like a game in general anymore. It feels like we're trying to change how we feel about things, change how we react to things in real life, and we don't need that shit in a video game. I get enough fucking politics on my social media scrolls. Even if I don't want it, it's fucking everywhere. So I don't need it in my game. I don't need righteousness constantly in my game. I can have good guys and bad guys. That's what I'd like to see. I want to see pretty plain and simple. This guy seems to be bad. This guy seems to be good. Okay, makes sense. I don't need a crossover event at the end where there's like this massive orgy and everyone finger pops each other because everyone's good now. I don't need that. I don't need that in my game, and I don't need to be lectured about what's actually good. I think I figured that out. And just play the game. Let me see some crazy, head bludgeoning shit going on, and let me enjoy the game for what it is. And it's really a game about high fantasy war. That's what I want to see.
That statement so plainly, but I'm trying to get through this bit quickly because I really do want to glaze the hell out of this cinematic. I really do. That's most of the point of this video. And to be clear, this is not about opposing progress within the world. I don't oppose that progress, and that does include within World of Warcraft. The factions should develop. The races should evolve.
Yes.
Old enemies should be finding common ground as they move through the world and its problems together. All of that stuff can work when it is earned. And the bit that I take issue with is how it continually just happens, and in a way where it does not feel like it is being earned through the experience of the story that we players play through the game's quests.
Yeah, people can change, things can change, factions can change, different leaders can change their opinions on things. That's fine. That's fine. But when it doesn't feel natural, like we said with the whole Arathi storyline and everything, then it just feels like, well, somebody came in and decided they didn't like this racist man and how he was talking, so they changed him completely in a way that made no sense for the story. And it all happened off screen too, because there's no way to truly develop that change. All right, it's just so off the fucking wall. It would take years of character development to make that change seem natural. So instead they're like, oh, it all happened off screen. He's actually, yes, he's bald, but he's changed. Not just his hairline has changed, his personality has changed. Okay, fine, whatever.
You see, when the fiction takes you through the struggle instead of skipping to the resolution, when that resolution emerges from the world's own logic after you playing through a big experience within that world, then it really works. So, all of that is to say that a fiction set in a different world should actually feel like a different world. And with that in mind, it is time to talk about all that is sacred.
All that is sacred.
So, let's talk about the cinematic then. It really just got me engaged and invested.
So good.
And it gets just about everything right. And I mean that at a deeper level than just saying, it's well animated, it's pretty. And it absolutely is.
Yeah, it is.
It's masterful, fantastic. But it works because it earns every single beat. You don't just learn what happened to the
And it's, you know what, it's so short, and yet so much character development happens here. Like, I didn't even know anything about Lady Liadrin's father before the cinematic ever came out. I'm not sure if he was in previous lore. I'm not sure if he's in some book or something that I missed, but I knew nothing about this man. And yet I loved him, man. Like, the way he's so fatherly. And I'm a dad. It was so relatable, like watching him interact with her, the way right here, he's got his hand on her shoulder, he's talking, trying to teach her things. And then when he dies, it's like this really sad moment where you're like, oh my God, but you don't have time to be sad. You don't have time to sit and whimper over it. It's like in the middle of a battle scene. And Lady Liadrin just has to keep going. It's a crazy epic cinematic. Such well-done storytelling. Like I said, some of this stuff happens out of game because they say, oh, we don't have time to tell the story in the game. They literally told a fantastic story, and I don't know what this thing was, like 5 minutes? They developed characters, told an entire story arc, and went through the whole thing perfectly. So well done. I love this cinematic.
You experience it. Every loss, every stage of disillusionment, every compromise. And by the time she tells Fowl who she is, you've been through
Alonzo's
it with
Fowl,
her.
badass.
And that is the difference. That is what I think Warcraft 3 was able to do by virtue of it being, a big old campaign, real-time strategy game, and that World of Warcraft has struggled with as it comes to MMO storytelling. And the team behind this cinematic really did go back to the source material, and that being Blood of the Highborn, which is the novella that defines Liadrin's backstory. And they respected the hell out of that. They adapted scenes directly from the novella faithfully and in ways that go beyond just a surface-level callback. And that really matters. That's the difference between a cinematic that looks good and one that actually lands and deeply respects the lore. It opens warm. There is golden light. Young Liadrin with her adoptive father Vandalor at the Sunwell. Her birth parents were killed by trolls, you see. That's a detail that will likely matter for Midnight, given that, well, the elves and the Amani will be having a bit of a fun time together.
I had no idea about this. This is cool. I need to brush up on my Lady Liadrin lore, I guess. So her parents were killed by trolls. He was her adoptive father. What a nice man. What a nice loving man. Look at that. And he was he seemed like such a fatherly figure to her in the cinematic.
But going back to the cinematic, Vandalor, High Priest of Kel'Thalas, took her in. You'll note as well that what he's wearing does match the Warcraft 3 priest. He raised her, and this is how she ends up becoming a priest. She takes after him. And the prayer he teaches her is quite specific. In a world that is cruel and unforgiving, I know the darkness can never prevail. This is not a generic blessing. It is a promise, and it's one you should remember because the cinematic is going to make you watch it not be true, because it ends up not being true. Now, one detail that's easy to miss here. Vandalor calls the Sunwell a font of energy, not a font of light. And that's because it doesn't become one until the Burning Crusade, whenever they place the heart of Muru inside it. So it's nice that the cinematic gets those little details right. Back to our story, because then Arthas comes. We see the fall of Silvermoon. The palette shifts to red. Liadrin's fleeing through the chaos. Vandalor falls. An abomination drives a sickle through his chest.
Crazy, man.
That's straight from the novella.
This is not going to be pretty. And I'm glad Blizzard didn't make it pretty. 90%. I don't think people fully understand what the fuck happened here. The Scourge killed off 90% of a population. Gone. In one battle. Destroyed. That's crazy. And that's not going to be a pretty scene. Imagine the amount of bodies that are left behind when 90% of your entire population has just been killed in a single battle. So yeah, the way they portrayed it here, I think was perfect. The red fog everywhere, probably blood in the fucking streets. This guy just got literally freaking chain whipped back into his death. Crazy scene, and I think it was portrayed perfectly. Yeah, the war is not pretty. Imagine that.
By the way, he has risen up.
This was a slaughter. More than it was a war, it was a slaughter.
And of course, not as himself. Rather, he is puppeted flesh. He is something.
And every death was an addition to the Scourge, too. That's the craziest thing. It's like that scene out of Game of Thrones. You remember where the undead guy I forgot his name, where he raises his hands, and everybody who was just fighting against the Scourge comes back to life and on their side now? That was the crazy thing about all this. And look at that. Her father comes back. Man, this is crazy.
That is wearing his face. And then he speaks. Liadrin hears her father's voice coming from a dead mouth.
Spoiler for Game of Thrones? Oh my god, if you haven't watched it yet, Jesus.
Again, that quote, darkness can never prevail. And when we see Liadrin act and respond to this, we see that she does not use the light. She can't, because by this point, her faith is already breaking. The man who taught her that darkness can never prevail just got ripped apart by the Scourge while that prayer played over the scene. She's watching that promise, at least for him, break in real time. So she kills this undead Vandalor, this undead adoptive father, the only way that she can. Physically with a mace. There's no magic, no divine stuff. She just beats the corpse of her adopted father until it stops moving. She has no choice. She has to do that. I guess she could try to run away. She could lie down and die. But no, that moment faced her and she did what she had to do. And the cinematic gives that moment the weight that it deserves. We see a blood-red sky, rain, no cutaway, no soft focus and things. She does it. The cinematic shows you it. And it intercuts it with her childhood laughter. it really
So
leans
good.
into the cruelty and the
Yeah.
horror of that scene for that character. Now, they don't show the decapitation directly, they show her cradling his covered head, which I suppose is almost worse. And then we get 5 years alone in the Ghostlands. We see sickly green dead trees, silence, that her faith doesn't waver, that in fact it's basically gone. And we see
Right.
then how the Blood Knights didn't really
I like how Alonza's Fowl kind of talks about her being a paladin, how she used to be a priest. I think the whole portrayal of paladins is really cool here because light originally was like a priest thing. That's it. Like these priests practiced the lighthood. They wore their cloth fabrics and it was all, elegant and it's all about healing and everything else. And then these paladins came along and they almost weaponized the light. They put on their armor. They talk about retribution paladins and how it's like a vengeful style of fighting with the light and everything like that. I thought that was a really cool portrayal of how the difference between paladins and priests.
form out of devotion. In a way, they formed out of spite, anger, a desire for revenge. They didn't ask the light for help, remember. The Blood
guys in the
Knights
hairline
took
comments,
its
Jesus.
power, and they did that by chaining the Naru, Muru, and siphoning its power. But here
He also empathized with her without lecturing her about him being undead. Yeah, no, totally. A very cool exchange. And yeah, Alonza's Fowl, extremely wise. Like whether or not you like undead or not, you gotta like him. He's really cool, and he's wise beyond his years. The man has basically lived 2 lifetimes, so of course he's gonna be super wise. And he drops some great one-liners on her for sure.
Here's what the cinematic doesn't shy away from, and what most people maybe wouldn't know, which is that this was not clean. Every time they channeled the light through Muru, they heard screaming in their heads. They got debilitating headaches. And this was on top of the magical withdrawal they were experiencing because the Sunwell was destroyed, meaning that every Blood Elf is literally experiencing magical addiction withdrawal at its worst.
Right.
They're not framed as conquerors seizing power when it
Bunch of crackheads, and that's what they were. Bunch of crackheads wandering around, wanting their crack magic.
comes to the formation of the Blood Knights. They are a broken people forcing a tool to work because faith failed them and they need something in a world that has proven it's out to kill them. And this isn't even the only time Liadrin has to destroy someone she loves. Her apprentice, Galel, her closest friend, someone the novella shows clearly cares about her deeply, cracks under the strain of the Blood Knight training and attacks her. She ends up having to kill him too. Decapitates him. It's brutal. That's me
Damn.
bringing in some additional lore. The cinematic chose to only show the most pivotal loss, but I think knowing there were other hard things for this character to go through does change how you hear everything.
I can almost empathize with Kale too. Yes, no, totally. I can empathize with Kale and what he tried to do for his people and try to find another font of power for them to live off of. No, totally. That's what's one really good thing about these, right? You look at him, he's an older Warcraft villain, right? And he is like a Thanos style story almost to him, where he was willing to do what he thought needed to be done, right? And that was a really cool thing about him. Was he a bad guy? Yeah, Kael'thas was a bad guy. He was, at the end of the day. He fell to the fell, and, he became all corrupted and shit, and he was what he was. But you understood his motivations. They were clear, and he never got his real redemption. Yeah, and fucking Shadowlands, I think they did some shit with him, and it was what it was. But at the end of the day, Kael'thas was who he was. He was a guy who was willing to do what he had to do to try to save his people, even if those things weren't that savory.
She says later. And the thing is, the cinematic doesn't frame any of this as being heroic. It doesn't frame it as being villainous either. It sits in discomfort. It's complicated, it's messy, and to me anyway, it feels the best of Warcraft. And I certainly remember experiencing Blood Elves in the Burning Crusade. I liked the edge that they had. It felt right, it felt distinct. And even though it could mean that the Blood Elves could act in some pretty damn villainous ways, to me, they were understandable, sympathetic villains. It made sense. And I think if you take a look at many who love the Blood Elves, they have often felt disappointed in how the edge of the Blood Elves has been sanded off over time.
Yeah.
It is good then that this cinematic exists as a reminder of that, and even better, a contemporary reminder of that. Now, I need to talk about the Scarlet Crusade fight. Just claps,
Yeah,
firm
amazing.
handshakes to everyone involved. It is a proper fight. It's
spells,
great. There are
everything about it.
bodies, there's fire, people die. It's a visual feast. The action is fantastic.
Yeah, with this cinematic and the Eretor cinematic, there's one thing that Blizzard clearly isn't afraid of here. It's showing death. It's fucking everywhere. There's people getting laid out by hammers and shields here. We witnessed mages just getting decimated by Sylvanas in the most recent one. Like, it's really cool that they're going back to that. Yeah, there's death and war. Wow, shocker. I don't know if there's, like I said, Dragonflight, every time a fucking boss died, we didn't even acknowledge they died. It was just like, let's move on real quick before we get too violent here. Yeah, we just killed somebody. Let's just move on.
And there's an irony the cinematic doesn't underline, but I think absolutely knows it's there. The Scarlet Crusade, a human-only order built on fanaticism, gets torn apart by an elf and an undead wielding the light better than any of them can. And taking a look at, say, how Alonsis uses the light, man, I would really take a melee DPS priest, because that shit looked really cool.
That was
and now
cool.
The present day framing.
Also, I love the way he goes full blown Yoda. Like he just went ham, right? He's fucking pulling all these moves, his badass abilities. Look at him flying around, using his staff and shit. And then at the very end, he goes right back to right back to hunched over. Just like Yoda, right? He goes full on with his sword and everything, and then right after, he grabs his cane and starts walking hunched over again. Really cool moment for Alonsis.
Cool. And now the present day framing. And this is where the cinematic does something quite brilliantly. Perhaps quietly brilliantly. Alonsis Fowl, himself an undead, walks with Liadrin through ruins scarred by the Scourge. And Fowl is a deliberate mirror to Vandalore, both undead, but of course, Fowl is in a different situation. He is not a mind-controlled scourge. He can still wield the light. Doing so causes him pain. One of the amazing bits of Warcraft's lore when it comes to undead light users. But of course, something literally not possible for Vandalore whenever he was turned. Fowl's very existence is a bit of an unanswered question for Liadrin. Why him? Why not her father? And what does that say about the light? And maybe, had she have ran away and allowed her father to be a shambling ghoul for a while, and maybe when things with Arthas turn, time goes on, could he have been saved? That's the kind of question that will exist in the mind of a character like this. And of course, Fowl knows her history. He knows about the Blood Knights. He knows the things that she has done. And
right.
His line, quote, "Some sought retribution for all the suffering they had endured. Others tried to bury their pain beneath armor. But it was those who did not find peace in the light who became the most dangerous." That is, yes, a philosophical point that he's making. It's also an intervention. He's describing a darker path she could go in. And I suppose he's seeing how she will react. And we see that she does not flinch. She says, "I became a paladin for every reason you said. Loss, despair, retribution." That's great. She's not denying, she's not spinning. She completely owns it. And given what we know, not just Vandalore, but also Galel, her parents, the Blood Knights for years, you could say she's almost understating it. She is dangerous because of what's happened to her, not in spite of it. And the cinematic treats that as being true without treating it as being wrong, because it does a great job of landing her lived experience, the horror she's went through as a character. That's why it works so well. And the Sunwell climax too works because it's ambiguous.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
even that cinematic, the animated one that we recently got, makes this cinematic better. It does. You almost feel like, this is the same place she stood with her adopted father back in the day. Like, you can understand her prayers to the light and everything so much more. It brings more depth to her character.
the main Midnight cinematic now, the one where she prays at the Sunwell and good things happen, ostensibly. We can now think to ourselves, did the light answer her faith? Or did it pragmatically respond to the void? Because the void was threatening its interests. That cinematic doesn't tell
Maybe
you,
both.
and I think it combines fantastically with this one, giving us a strong ambiguity, one that just feels authentic. And I suppose the tone of Warcraft 3 is something that just really rang true for me as I was watching this cinematic. And it is a narrative draw that I don't feel I have got from the questing content of World of Warcraft for quite some time indeed. Now, I know there's another angle on things where, galloping abs, sweaty orcs, Warlords of Draenor cinematic, give us big, rad, awesome, actiony things. And you know what? I'm down for all of that stuff. That's fine. But why I really wanted to bring this up is because this cinematic got all the spectacle, got all those things right, but it handled the characters and the theme so damn well. And it scratched itches that the game I log into often fails to do, and sometimes in fairly disappointing ways. And it's clear to me many feel this way. I definitely can't say that it's everyone, and if you disagree entirely and you think this is just me having some cope or just going off on my own theory, that is totally fair. It's totally fair. We can still be friends. There's no need for us to do the narcissism of small differences against each other. We're all on the same team. I just think, look, this is the tone of Warcraft 3. I think this kind of thing is what people are actually mourning when they say that WoW doesn't feel like Warcraft as much anymore.
True.
We did a video covering things like this a few months ago, and over 200,000 of you watched it, and did see pretty broad agreement. Not everyone, but I know at least this has not been a niche complaint, and I think this is the ultimate answer to it. In 2026, it's an example of what I think Warcraft has been missing, done near perfectly. That's not to say that there have not been good spots over the last 5-10 years. There absolutely has been. But man, I think about Farak the Everblazing. I think about the Avenger scene. I think about Red Dawn. I think about a lot of those stories. I look at this cinematic, and I do think to myself, is this the same IP? Is this the same game? One of them feels
it's the same
right.
game.
The other one just doesn't.
Yeah, just told better.
Where are we at then? Well, this cinematic is one good thing. One good thing. It does not fix the quest writing. It doesn't undo how I think they've handled Eitrig and the Sons of Lothar stuff in a very ham-fisted way. It doesn't
Unbelievable. I've seen Mags comes into chat, first time chatter. He goes, I've seen this guy on YouTube. He's the guy who pre-watches all the videos, right? Ridiculous. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You guys, look what you're doing. You're portraying this reputation all over YouTube and Twitch now. Unbelievable.
Attractively make the Red Dawn
Congratulations,
quest line
Samiccus
any less embarrassing. And from what I've seen in Midnight, there's lots of great story stuff. Seems there's a lot of really big, cool moments set up.
You did it.
But I also do see many of the same problems. But I think this does show that the storytelling capability is there whenever there is appropriate direction. And that's one of the benefits a cinematic like this will have, that the main game just can't have, by virtue of how both of them are made in completely different ways, with completely different scale teams and completely different pipelines. And yes, cinematics have often been Blizzard's best foot forward, but I'm not saying that this is just a quality gap between the cinematic team and the quest team. What I'm saying is that it's a storytelling philosophy gap. I think here, one team has trusted the fiction. I think the other has more often than not kept on smoothing it out. Just somewhere inside Blizzard, a team understood that a character forged by violence and loss is more interesting than a character who has moved past those things.
Yes.
And the bit that matters far more than the destination that character gets to, which sure, if that's healing and that's progress, I'm all for that. The bit that matters, the bit that defines so many great stories, is going through that experience with that character. That's where I think a lot of the mark has been missed. Moral ambiguity is more compelling than moral clarity. A world called Warcraft should have a tone of loss, struggle, and war. And in having that, the warmer moments, which I know Blizzard deeply loves, those will feel all the more warm. So my ask isn't complicated. Yeah. Explore the universe's identity from new angles. Don't flatten it. Let characters grow, but do so without losing their rough edges. Let factions evolve without becoming indistinguishable from each other. Let violence be a legitimate resolution to problems in a world that has always been defined by it. Because in the world of Warcraft, with the setup of this world and the factions, it just doesn't map on to our current world and our current moral progress. A progressive character in Warcraft probably should feel at times a bit regressive to our modern lens.
Sure, yeah.
Because it is a world that is rooted
Right.
in
Progress isn't linear. I mean, he's right. Everyone's character arc has its ups and downs for sure.
medieval fantasy.
In real
It's
life and in
rooted in a
games.
world where
This is how it should
so
be to be
many
relatable.
of the societal, moral, etc., developments of our current world have not existed yet. So when it feels like they've came through a portal from the future, instead of being authentically developed within Warcraft and for that world, then they don't ring as true, even if they may feel good to write. And all that is why a daughter beat her father to death with a mace in the rain. It's horrible and depressing, and it's probably one of the best things
It's real,
Blizzard have
man.
released in years.
Yeah.
It is in the S tier. More of this. I don't mean this as a baton to beat the shit out of the game with. I think this is something to hold up as an example. In an ideal world, it's something so good that storytellers can rally around it and feel confident that they can go to places that the game has often struggled to. Okay, big old video, great cinematic, more of that, please. And oh my god, Blizzard, if you guys could get stuff like this, but like as a TV series, oh, we'd really be cooking. I mean, could you imagine a anthology of, I don't know, maybe 23-minute episodes, do 10 of them a season.
Oh my god.
And, you know,
I'd
you could
watch
just
the
have a
shit out of
season
it.
be The Rise of Arthas, another one be The Fall of Arthas. You could go through so many of the biggest moments in Warcraft that have their narrative
Yes, they do
beats
need to make a
mapped
Netflix
out,
like
that
this.
are huge archetypical stories that we know resonate with the masses, and give them what they
I'll
deserve.
talk about that here in a
I
second.
never thought I'd give a shit about a character like Liadrin as much as this cinematic was able to make me. So, bravo. It's great. Go watch it if you haven't watched it, by the way. And if you'd like to see how Blizzard are thinking about the world revamp, watch this video next, because on that topic, they have changed their tune.
Yeah, great video. Look, as I gotta say, yeah, as Mag said, I have to say, nice video overall. Look, the story of Liadrin and everything, so well told through that cinematic. And yes, we do need some sort of Netflix series like this. I mean, the popularity of Arcane, right, as a series about League of Legends lore and everything. Like, come on, we're gonna compare the two. I know League of Legends lore goes deep, and I understand there's a whole world behind it all, but Warcraft has such a good lore base. It does. To tell it through this story style, this art style, to give it episodic series like that to World of Warcraft or to the Warcraft lore in general, I think would hit great. I think it'd be amazing. I would love to see it, and I think people who don't even play WoW would love to see shit like this. No doubt. So, cool stuff. Nice video. Did you just watch Bellular react to a video while watching Samiccus react to his reaction? Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And that's the degenerativeness of this, of the internet today. But overall, nice video from Bellular. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Liadrin cinematic, and I hope we get more stuff like that.